Hello, this is Talking Utter Slot, the slotcar podcast, but this one's a little bit different. Normally we talk about what we've seen, what we've bought, what we've been playing with, and the fun we have with toy cars. But this one's a little bit special, and it takes the form of a conversation with a good friend of mine, Gareth, who over the years built up a huge collection of slot cars, and then he got rid of them. He sold them all and kept literally a handful because he had enough. And I was fascinated about both the process of acquiring that collection and what it felt like once you got rid of it. So here's the first part of two. Hello, you are listening to Talking Utter Slot, the podcast that thinks playing with toy cars should be fun because you don't take it too seriously. Except this episode, we're talking about taking it quite seriously. Gareth has rejoined me, thank you. Last time we talked about organising the big events for the NSCC and the first Slot Rally GB. This time I want to talk about your collection, how you started it, how big it got, and crucially, and this is why I think it's interesting for those of us who are still in the thrall, is that the right use of the word, in the thrall of collecting slot cars, that you got rid of it all.
Yeah.
So, as a quick kind of headline, how many cars did you have at the
I
peak?
knew you were going to ask me this, and I honestly don't know. And like I say, there are two parts to my collecting part, and if I'm brutally honest with you, I don't know how many cars either collection had. But the first part, when I was collecting all slot cars or all scalextric cars, was definitely in excess of 1,000 easily, probably knocking on 2. I don't know. I really don't know. And the rally cars, when I collected the rally cars, it was, probably knocking on 1,000 as well, possibly more. I don't know. And that's actually part of the end story, if you like, because I genuinely don't know how many I did have.
Okay, but you
I've had thousands.
you went from you. So let us do the magic of podcasting and sort of wibbly wobbly lines and back in time to when you didn't have any of those and you sort of started, or you
when
sort
I was in
of
shorts.
So tell us how you started the collection, as it were.
Okay, so those of you who listened to the podcast before, I guess like most people, you start collecting something because you think it's going to be fun or whatever. And likewise, you never think anybody else is doing it, I guess. That's just the way it was, certainly pre-internet. And I started playing with slot cars, because that's what I did to begin with, when I was about, I would say, probably quite late. Certainly not as a kid, because my mum and my dad was into model railways massively. Big model railway fanatic. Built, model railway scenes and all this kind of fabulous one up in the loft. And so I was not really into slot cars at all until I think I must have been about 15, 16, so quite late. And I kind of started work at a camera shop in Purley, near South Croydon, that sort of way. And one of my good friends at the time had a better job, and we both had disposable income and time on our hands. This is pre kind of proper girlfriends and all that, and beer. We bought all these bits and pieces in jumble sales. I mean, again, some of the younger viewers, they're going to say, "What's a jumble sale?" Well, it's a thing. And I just bought up all these little slot cars and bits of track, as everybody does. All of it scalextrics, obviously. And just had a few cars. I probably had, 20 cars. And we'd go down to the local scout hut that my mum had access to, and we'd build this enormous track in the scout hut. I mean, we're talking huge, great, single lane, massive though, booster cables, you name it, all of it. And then when we ran out of track, we popped to Toys R Us, buy the latest 4-car F1 set, take all the track out, use all the track, carefully put it all back in, and then my mate would take it back on a Monday morning and say, "Oh, no, we don't want this anymore." Bit naughty, but there we go. I think it's going back a while now, so I don't think they're going to come. I don't even know if Toys R Us are still going. Anyway.
No, they went bust, probably because of people like you taking back.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, so it was just playing with slot cars, and there was nothing more to it, really. But in the process of doing that, and again, you look back at it, you think, "Oh, how lucky was I?" Some of the jumble sale finds were some odd bits and bobs. You had your normal Porsche 911s, you had your red BRM, jelly mold type looking cars. But then I got a Bentley 3.5 litre, and I looked at it and thought, blimey, that's quite cool. And then because of that, you think, oh, what other things are out there? And of course, invariably, when you buy a set from a jumble set, it's got the old brochures in them, and you think, oh, this is great. Oh, yeah, I want that. And of course, it's of that area. I think it was magnet traction. And when they put titanium spark things on the bottom of the Formula One cars, all that kind of stuff. So it's quite exciting. And you start to look back and you think, oh, I really like that. I really like that. Really like that. So you kind of amass these things, but it just happens by accident. And you get this. I got all these cars, and like I say, 20 of them, but they were all pretty varied. And then, as young lads do, it kind of gets a bit competitive. So you think, right, I'm going to go and see what actually I can buy at the local model shop, which existed then. Off you go. And there, lo and behold, was a Scalextric. I think I'm going to get this right. SRS2 Renault 5 turbo jelly mold thing. But I took this thing out of this box, and there were different gears, and there was a little spanner, and I put it on the track and annihilated my mate's cars. And it was just like, this is amazing, sort of thing. But it was called Scalextric, and I didn't know anything other. But it wasn't in the catalogues. And I thought, that's a bit weird. So anyway, you carry on. So then it grew. A couple of years off later, proper job, bit more disposable income, came back to it, bought a few more cars and stuff. And then you start getting into it a bit more seriously. So then, just by chance, I remember I was on holiday and working overseas. And this is at the infancy of the website and the internet and stuff. And I was just Googling around on my brother-in-law's computer because I didn't have one, and came across Phil Smith's website and just couldn't believe the amount of Scalextric cars there were. Okay, and it's just like awe-inspiring. I thought, wow, this is amazing. So then I came across Adrian Norman's website. Again, this enormous list, and I thought, oh, this is great. I am a collector. I am a hoarder. This is my thing. That's what I'm going to do. Fabulous. And
I'm sure we should say, just for those for the overseas listeners, we've got a couple. So Phil Smith is still a very active trader, and his website probably hasn't changed, to be honest, in terms of the layout.
Probably not.
Who travelled the length and breadth of the land, going to swap meets and fairs and buying up collections. So he had a lot of stuff, still does. And Adrian was, whether he was at that time, he worked at Scalextric. He worked for Hornby.
He didn't at the time. No, he was a member of the NSCC, quite a senior one, and then he went to Hornby.
Yeah, one day I'll get him to come on the podcast and tell us what it's really like on the inside.
Yeah.
But I dig it. So just to explain, those two names were sort of fairly prominent figures in the slot car world in the UK.
Yeah. So anyway, I came across their websites and realised just how big it was, and started collecting slot cars because I enjoyed it. And I don't know how many cars there are, but I'd take a wild guess. At that time, colour variations, all that kind of stuff, there were probably, 4,000 Scalextric cars of different liveries, colours, countries of origin, shapes and sizes and all that kind of. But I'd say 4,000. Probably somebody will come back to me and say, no, there's 4,030 or whatever. But I don't, roughly. I know a fairly large but manageable potential number.
If I reach off camera for a moment and bring back Adrian's previous tome on the two, which is very full of pictures of slot cars. There's a lot.
There's a lot.
He subsequently superseded this with a 10, 12 volume.
Yeah. But this shaped it as well, because yes, there was a website, but you couldn't buy a book there was an earlier book, not written by Adrian. I've forgotten what the guy's name was actually now.
Roger Gillam.
Yeah, well done. Yes, yeah. And again, so you get that, and you suddenly realise, there's actually quite a lot here to collect. But in terms of individual slot cars, actually, there's not that many. If you strip out all the colour variations and the different liveries and the different guide flags and wheels and all that stuff, actually, you're probably talking 400, maybe 300 or 400 cars if you look at it like that. So I thought, very achievable. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. So I did. started collecting, buying slot cars, swap meets, yes, NSCC, yes, joined that, member of the club and all that kind of stuff, going to swap meets, going to jumble sales and classified ads in newspapers and all that kind of stuff. And the collection grew and grew and grew because when I say there's like, say, 200 or 300 different types of car, when you start collecting, every collector out there knows that you can't just have one Porsche 911 in red, because there's a gold one. And Roger Gillam, was it Gillam?
I haven't got it to hand, but
I
yeah,
remember
something.
he used to grade them as to how rare they were. So you look at it and think, oh, that one says it's 3 out of 5 being rare. I've only got a red one, and that's 1, and that's boring. I'll have to get the gold one. Okay, I'm going to get a gold one. And then, the gold one comes with a silver one as well. And that's equally... Before you know it, you've got cabinets full of slot cars. So I'm in my old slot car room now, which is full of something else, not slot cars. And I'm looking at the cabinets over on my left. And I know that when I lived in our first house, my wife and I bought our first house, it was quite small, 2 up, 2 down. And the study had 4 cabinets, and they're the same 4 cabinets that are over there. And I'm looking at that and thinking, well, how many cars are in there? Because that's how big the collection was. And it filled them. And when I say it filled them, originally when you first get them, each car is beautifully displayed slightly at an angle, so you can see it all. Looks lovely. And then you get another one, I haven't got any space. So it goes flat and gets pushed up the back of the cabinet. And before you know it, they're too deep, stacked, and all you see is a sea of plastic. And you think, they look quite nice when they're out, but in the cabinet, no, they don't look great. Anyway, and then we moved, got a bigger house, and obviously I had a load of other cabinets made. So my room now is full of cabinets. And the collection grew and grew and grew to the point where these cabinets ultimately were full. Had no more space.
I remember it was quite a feeling to walk into the middle of it. It was like a real Aladdin's cave, yeah.
Yeah, and of course they were. And the thing is, as well, God forbid all the collectors out there, I took them out of the boxes, so all my cars were displayed unboxed on glass shelves. Fine. A, because they look better like that. B, because it gave me some perverse sense of satisfaction unboxing them. But also because I didn't have the space to keep them in their boxes.
The boxes do take
up in the loft.
The boxes take up. I just a quick. I feel when we moved to up to the Midlands, this was about 95, and because I had to move, and I didn't have anything like that. I mean, how many cars I had at the time? I don't know, 50. I decided I would burn all the boxes. So I remember burning a whole load of Scalextric boxes. So I don't know how much money that. The other anecdote that I remember one night at the club. So this is a bit of a diversion on unboxing.
I thought that unboxing was
unboxing's banned, but yeah. But I remember coming to the club at Farnham, and I'd been in Spain, and I'd got a 2-car set which is basically just 2 normal cars in their usual plastic cases with a special cardboard wrap round it.
Yeah.
And they were both Spanish Formula 1 drivers, obviously. And I was undoing this box, and you sort of stopped and looked and said, "You realise you are halving the value of that, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, sort of toy cars, you know."
So I wasn't quite that bad. And when I say unbox them all, I did carefully unbox them all, which actually I'm thankful I did at the time, because that comes back to haunt me later on. Anyway, so
yeah. Anyway, sorry. So you were still buying old stuff as well as ordering. You were getting new stuff at the same time.
Yeah. So this was predominantly, I would say, 95% scalextric. Not NSCC. Not Ninko, not Fly, just scalextric, because that's what I thought it was. But again, almost from day one, those SRS2 cars that, of course, they came in scalextric boxes, which I bought from the local toy shop. I just assumed it was all part of the same family, but obviously we all know better that actually that was SCX or Spanish scalextrics. And again, you go to these. I remember going to. How do I remember this stuff? I was in Tenby in Wales again on a holiday. Went into a toy shop, and there were these scalextrics cars, branded scalextrics in the boxes, and they were like $5.99 each, new. And the scalextrics car next to it was £12.99 or whatever it was. And they were the same car. They were BMW M3s. I don't know how that stuff's just come back to me. It has just come back to me. I hadn't been making notes. But I remember there was a purple BMW M3, scalextric in a box, £5.99. Next to it, different box, scalextric, different logo, but still says £12.99. I thought, I'm not having that one, I'm having that one. So I bought three because they were cheaper. And then, of course, you realise, different company. And then you see their range, you think, oh, even better. Still scalextrics, I'll collect that as well. So it grew and it grew and it grew. But like I say, I ran out of space, and then I moved, had more space, and the collection gets even bigger. But this is sort of first turning point in my collecting, really, because after a point, it just got to the point that I was buying slot cars because version 1 was light red, version 2 was dark red, version 3 had 6-spoke wheels and one type of motor, and they were getting very specific, unusual, primarily because I'd run out of collecting one of everything. So then you sort of dial into the minutiae of colour variations and different liveries and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the earlier cars, this is before we even start talking about stuff that's made in South Africa and Mexico and France and Spain and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so you end up buying this stuff, and I did a lot. We are talking a lot. And you realise I don't like what I'm buying. So I said to you pre-recording, when I'd reached that sort of realisation that I was buying stuff that I really wasn't liking anymore just because it happened to be a scalextric slot car, but it was a single-seater. And I don't mind watching Formula One, but there's a lot of shit scalextric single-seaters. There really are. I can't even remember what they're called now, but I distinctly remember there was like a gold one with black stars on it, and they were awful. I mean, you just look at them and thought, I think my 5-year-old daughter could probably carve this out of a banana. It looks better than this. But you kind of, and you think, well, why have I hunted the internet or all these places to find this gold one with black stars on it because it's rare, because Roger Gillam says it's rare, not many of them made, but it's horrible. And so you buy it, you put it in the collection, you think, I'm not getting any pleasure out of that. Why am I not getting? Well, I don't like single-seaters. Right, okay, so let's get rid of all of them. And I thought, right, well, what do I really like? And what I really like, and still do, is rally cars. So it reached a sort of a pinnacle of scalextrics collecting, and then it got to the point where I was buying stuff that I just didn't like anymore, which, when you're a collector, hoarder, it kind of goes by the by. And of course, you go to a swap meet and there's all there, and Phil Smith saying, oh, Gareth, have you got this? No, I haven't got that. Of course, then you bring it back. Shit, I have got it. And you buy stuff doubles and all this kind of stuff and la la la. So I said, right, I'm getting rid of it all. I'm getting rid of everything that I don't like, either the real car or whatever. And I said, right, I'm just going to collect slot rally cars. So that was like a light bulb going off. But then, of course, I had to pack it all up again. And so up to the loft, find all the boxes, marry up the boxes with the cars, box them all up. How do I get rid of this? Well, luckily, I think this came up on, I think Nick was talking about it last week, the James May Brooklands.
Yeah, the first big...
the big event.
Yeah.
I took a swap meet table. I booked a table there, a couple of tables, and I just had everything else on this table that wasn't what I liked. I wasn't a rally car, and it was all for sale. Now, you can probably imagine a lot of the dealers came round in the morning and hoovered up all the nice stuff, and that's all fine.
Just how many cars are we talking about? What's roughly
300, 400, maybe more. Yeah.
Wow.
You say wow, but actually you go to a swap meet, look at a dealer's table. That's probably only one table.
That's a dealer, though. This is you were a private individual bringing your collection. So anyway, just to get, again, mental. So you've got this table arrayed with 300 odd cars.
Yeah, probably more, actually, thinking about it. 300 is not, it wasn't enough, because I know, because the next part of the story is I remember this guy. So all the dealers came along, hoovered up all the good stuff before all the punters arrived, or all the stuff they wanted. And then I had all this other stuff I had a fantastic day. It was quite an eye-opener because, I don't mind saying I didn't do too badly out of it. You know,
Mm.
I think in honesty, like most collectors, you like to think, well, I took thousands of pounds, and I did, but it probably cost me thousands of pounds to buy it all. So I probably didn't make any money, but I felt quite good doing it. Because I do remember this guy turning up. We're talking about single seaters again. And he just came to the table and he said, "Have you got any single seaters?" And I'd had some of them put out, okay, because I knew nobody was really going to buy them. So I just put a few of them out. I said, "Yeah, I've got quite a few." Why? He said, "Oh, that's what I collect. I collect single seaters, and I've just started." It's like, welcome.
Hello,
Let me buy you a
hello,
cup of
hello.
coffee. Come around the back, sir. And he took away 2 whopping great big cardboard boxes full of all the single seaters I had. And it was like happy days. I thought, fantastic. And I guess he was the opposite of me. He loved single seaters, and that's what he bought. Good for him. I didn't, and I got rid of it.
Yeah, he probably tells a story about, I went along to this thing and I was really lucky. There was this guy selling all this stuff,
And they were really cheap.
Yeah, and if that chap is listening, get in touch. We'd love to know if you've still got them. Anyway, sorry.
So I got rid of all of it. And obviously, you know, I kept a few bits and bobs that were really nice or really expensive or whatever. But I kept all the rally cars. And I decided there and then that that's all I'd buy and all I'd collect. And again, at the time, you know, you've only got to look at Scalextric's catalogue. I mean, I haven't looked at one for years, but I'm guessing they still have a smattering of rally cars, and all the way through all the decades they've been making them, they've always had a rally car of some flavour in the catalogue. And that's fine. And I could have just said, right, I'm just going to collect Scalextric's rally cars and left it at that. And it probably would have been 200 cars in the collection, probably not quite as many as you might think. But of course I don't. And then, of course, at that time, Fly comes along, Linko comes along, SCX comes along. And you're exposed to lots of rally cars because most of those companies are Spanish.
Mm.
The Spanish love their rallying, probably more than Formula One, I guess. I'm not sure.
At the time, yeah,
Probably
you know,
at the time.
Carlos Sainz Senior
Yeah.
was you know, motorcycling was the thing, rallying was next, and F1 and they didn't really care about it.
Yeah.
You know?
So
Until Fernando Alonso came along, you could go to the Spanish Grand Prix and, you know, get in on the day without spending too much money. You know.
So obviously they were making cars primarily for their home market. And that was great for me because suddenly there were all these rally cars, which I loved the look of, loved occasionally playing with. Deliveries, you know, were quite exciting. And I do get it. I mean, I remember talking to Phil Smith and he says, "Oh, I hate rally cars. They're just road cars with pretty pictures of them." And fair enough. He's not wrong.
I can just imagine him saying that, actually.
Yeah. So I collected rally cars and it was great. But obviously then, because there are so many other manufacturers out there, your research and your opportunities broaden massively. And so the collection, again, primarily financed by this windfall of single-seater purchases, meant that I could go out and buy lots of rally cars. And I did. And I bought lots and slot rally cars and continued to do so for many years. I'd probably say that collection, I can't remember when the James May thing was. Do you remember what year it was?
I want to say off the top of my head, 2008, something like that, maybe a bit later.
Right. Yeah, so what are we now, 2024? So I stopped collecting, I think 5 or 6 years. Yeah, 5 years ago. Yeah. So quite a number of years I just collected slot rally cars. And that's what fueled my passion for all these events that we talked about on the last podcast and all that kind of stuff. And that was great fun, really good. And I enjoyed it. And I met lots of nice people. We went slot rallying and created our own events and the championship and all that kind of stuff was all good. And at the time, obviously, I was doing all this stuff with the NSCC as well. I was chatting to all these manufacturers and they quite frequently say, "Okay, what should we make next?" And I would obviously say a rally car, clearly. And when they turned around and said, "No, we're making this Formula One car," I go, "Oh, boring." But, you know, I was giving advice to them as to what to make, and 9.9 times out of 10, they'd completely ignore it. And, you know, I thought I was doing my best to try and help.
Was there anything that you'd like to take some credit for happening? Can you remember anything that you may have suggested that saw the light of day? Not to worry.
Probably not. Quite depressingly, probably not, actually. I'm sure Steve from AEC might be able to shed some light a little bit more on that. But as at the time, I was having a lot of conversations with Steve from AEC because he was the important.
He's now better known as Staff Slots.
Staff Slots. Okay, sorry, Steve. I didn't know that. Staff Slots, right? AEC before that. He was the distributor and importer for Team Slot, SCX, Avant Slot,
Avant Slot, yeah.
About 5 brands. And of course, they were quite rally central or quite rally centric, did a lot of rally cars. And of course, Team Slot at the time were quite low number manufacturers. They were quite, if you like, quite quirky. And again, I remember at the beginning of my slot rally collection, I made some chunky purchases of Team Slot cars because they were the only people making Audi Quattros. The only people making all these cars. They were the only people making half decent models of Mark I Ford Escorts and stuff like that. And I do say half decent with a pinch of salt because
it's all relative. I think, yeah. I mean, people who have come to the hobby more recently, we really are spoiled these days because the detail and the correctness, if that's the right word, is phenomenal compared to what it was even 20 years ago.
You look at an early Team Slot, and they were all hand resin cars, hand poured resin cars, and they were.
And they were caricatures.
Yes, they were.
They were caricatures.
Some of them were better than others, but some of them were just bloody awful.
But as you say, it was the only game in town for certain things, and if, that was your choice. I mean, a measure of how not great they were. I mean, given that I was a 6R4 fanatic, even I resisted their 6R4 because it less resembled a 6R4 than back in my hand. But anyway,
it less resembled it the older it got as well because they tended to sort of
slightly, But where it's easy to.
Good case in point, 6R4 big collection. I mean, one of my sort of side collections was MGs. I used to love MGs. I had MGs. I rallied an MG. An MG was my first company car. I loved MGs, so I had a collection of MG slot cars as well in one cabinet. And of course, the 6R4s, they were the only people you could get. So typically, I had probably 20 Team Slot 6R4s. Yeah.
Wow.
All of them, as you say, mildly rubbish. But that's all you could get. And then obviously you compare that with the scalextric one. Also not great. Not really bad, but not great. And it wasn't a 6R4, it was a Metro with a 6R4 splashed onto it.
Bit stuck on it, yeah. I remember being very excited when in the catalogue, whatever year it was, 87, 88, they showed what would have been a proper 6R4 model. But it didn't get made, not for 20 odd years, was it, until they did the more recent one.
Anyway, so that's where I was. So lots and lots of different manufacturers, rally cars, lots of it. And all the cabinets were laid out alphabetically. Audi was over there and VW was down there. So it went all the way around the room in alphabetical order. And when I started laying it out, I did leave sort of strategic gaps. Because I did have a fairly good idea of what was going to come out. And you can imagine the Citroen cabinet was full.
Well, it would have started pretty much empty and then just, thanks to Mr. Loeb.
And there was probably 30 Citroens with his name on the side of it. Yeah. So that was all good and I enjoyed it. And I loved collecting it. But then it becomes quite perverse in some ways, and I don't mean in a sort of a legal way, but you can find everything relatively easily, and actually the only restriction on your collecting is how deep your pockets are.
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I sent an email to all the UK and Spanish and French slot car dealers now and say, I have an unlimited budget, you have 6 months to find me every single Citroen slot rally car ever made, I'm pretty sure they'd all be on my desk within about 3 weeks.
I'm sure they'd love to get the call these days.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not difficult.
Well, I guess that's, but that's. I mean, this is where you touch into the psychology of like the pleasure of collecting. But we all set our own boundaries. What is it I'm collecting? I mean, I believe Maurizio Ferrari, one half of Slot It.
Yeah.
I think he tells everybody, whether it's true, he only collects
Six-wheelers.
six-wheeled Formula One cars.
Yeah.
Now, he could probably have it, but he's picked something which has got a clear boundary, and he can enjoy that. And I think we all do that. I mean, I wouldn't say I was a collector. I like to think I buy things I like, but
that's fine. If that's your category, that's fine. But
what I was going to say, when the die-cast stuff, when I was working for Toyota, and I would buy any old piece of shit that was coming out because it was and I remember, I had I think it was a Mark IV Celica or something, the very blobby one, not pre the rally cars, and it was in sort of diarrhea green, and it wasn't even a very good model, and I thought, why have I bought that?
Yeah.
Now, I'm hopeful that when I come to sell it, of course, it's going to be the most valuable one in the collection because nobody will have bought it, and it'll be pretty.
So there's always that element of but the collecting becomes easy / too easy, and so I'm quite lucky at certainly at that time. I'm not boasting, but I had an income that I could afford to buy this stuff. And also, I was also very lucky in so much as because we had Farnham Slotcar Club going, and I had this relationship with the manufacturers. I had trade accounts, so again, it wasn't costing me the earth for these new models, and that was good. We had a club shop, and that meant we could keep the prices down, which was great. And I would have, my office, my secretary and my PA and receptionist used to be frustrated hell because there'd be a small van load of stuff arriving at the office, and she'd say, "Is this for work?" Nah, slot cars, fine. To the point that they knew what it was as well. They had a vague, is this the latest Escort, Gareth? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? No, it's not. Get it out of the reception. Anyway, so my point is that it became quite easy. And I remember, a bit like your lime green diecast that you were talking about, I remember getting really excited when I came across this company. I think they're in Mexico, or they might have been even Colombia somewhere. Christ knows how I found it, but they did an Auto Union rally car, and I can't even remember what it was. It was like a really 1950s Auto Union type thing, pre-Audi, and it's like, oh, brilliant. And I emailed the guy and blah blah blah, and did a money transfer to Mexico or wherever it was, and sure enough, 2 months later, this box arrived with this Auto Union slot car, and basically it was a Palmer chassis with a jelly mould on the top, and it was shocking. But I knew it was shocking, but perversely, I'd found great pleasure in the fact that it was quite difficult to get for me because I didn't live in Mexico, and therefore the whole process of buying it, finding it, was great, and I found that exciting. So you kind of look at your cabinet and you think, oh, that's really good. It's shocking and shit, but actually I found a great deal of perverse pleasure in it because it was difficult to find, and I'm probably the only idiot in the UK that's got one.
The second and final part of this conversation with Gareth is available as a separate episode of Talking Utter Slot. You can find that on the YouTube channel or wherever you download your podcasts from.